Ring that bell. Museum City. I hear it dinging. There they go. So kind of an interesting day today. Last night and this morning, markets were substantially higher. Trump had said that he was going to exempt Apple and some other AI companies from tariffs for a while. Market just took off. It was up 400 points overnight this morning, up 300 points going into the open. Open, it started to drift off a little bit. And for whatever reason, it really kind of slid from about 300 higher to 1.400 lower in the Dow Jones Industrial Average alone, ends up about 215 lower. Not a bad day considering it could have been a lot worse. And NASDAQ up a little bit, bucked the trend up a little bit, S&P down a little. And we look at things like this. Oil, some good news in the oil patch, down another 62 cents at $63.50 a barrel. That's very, very good news. Gold up again, bucks the trend on everything. Gold is just on it's got a 2-month high right now at 34.64 as we speak. And crypto had a good day. Crypto was inching around 114,000, 115,000 yesterday, 117.5 today for Bitcoin. Ethereum 38.70, another couple of month high for Ethereum. Solana 172. A lot of people trade Solana. Dogecoin 21 cents, and XRP $3.11. So crypto had a nice trading day. I also want you to take a look at the live shot. I guess I told you, President Trump, well, he's at the White House. He's in the East Room of the White House. He's going to talk about, believe it or not, debanking. Debanking is when banks decide whether or not they're going to allow you to do business at their bank. And sometimes it turns out it's political. And Trump was debanked in 2020 and 2021 by some of the biggest banks in the world. He said he's had enough. It was wrong. It was all lawfare. And JP Morgan Chase was one of the ones who debanked Donald Trump, the man, for doing absolutely nothing wrong. He was doing nothing wrong. He was defending himself in court, and he was being debanked by some of the biggest banks in the world. So this will be an executive order pushing back against the very political move by big banks to debank. And most of the time, it's against conservative ideas. We had a minute to talk to Harrison Fields just a minute ago, right before the show started. He's a deputy from the White House. So take a look to this. By the way, we will bust into it if Trump starts to speak at the East Room of the White House. Take a look. President Trump and the Trump White House, well, they're celebrating 200 days in office, and the president is keeping his promises. Here to discuss his principal deputy press secretary and special assistant to the president of the United States, Harrison Fields. Harrison, promises kept. We'll let you take the floor for a little bit because there's some cool stuff that went on. First of all, I'd love to talk a little bit about what Tim Cook did yesterday in the Oval Office. And then also Trump's been nominated today for a Nobel Peace Prize amongst all the other things that have gone on the last 200 days. But the floor is yours, sir. So take it away.
Yeah, we are on day 200 and we've got 1,260 days left, but who's counting? But let me tell you, it's been all gas, no brakes here at the Trump White House. We came here with an historic mandate, winning 7 swing states, nearly 80 million Americans voting for this Make America Great Again agenda. And the president, as you said earlier, this is promises made, promises kept. If you look at the southern border, we have 0 people coming into our border. That's incredible. That's what the American people voted for. If you look at the economy, the American people feel so much better than they did 4 years ago or even 1 year ago today. When you go to the gas station and you now see a 2, in some states a 1 instead of a 3 or a 4 in front of the gas tank, that is helping American families. We just passed one big beautiful bill, which is historic tax cuts for the American people. You see what we're doing when it comes to deregulation. You see the rescissions package that we sent to the U.S. House and the Senate, which passed out, the president signed, automatically cutting $9 billion out of our federal government. Promises made, promises kept. You look at what we're doing on the world stage. We are getting our allies stronger. Look at NATO. 5% is now the number for their defense. You see ongoing conversations with Putin. We're trying to end the war in the Middle East between Gaza and Israel. This president has been able to do something that no president has been able to do do in 200 days. This has been the most consequential 200 days of any administration. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that there's a lot of issues that don't necessarily get all the news, but what the president's been able to do with school choice, giving parents the autonomy over their child's education, that's huge. You look at what we've been able to do in higher education, getting DEI, getting CRT, getting our higher education universities back to doing what they should be doing, which is teaching and not the subjective crap that we've been seeing at Harvard and Columbia. But we're also seeing no men and women's sports. This is incredible. This is what a lot of suburban moms across this country were voting for President Trump, not to mention all the Make America Healthy Again agenda in which we're ripping food dyes out of our food. We are protecting our youth from chronic disease, all at the hands of our amazing HHS Secretary, Secretary Kennedy. So this president, this entire administration are working seamlessly to effectuate the mandate that the American people gave us. And we've got a lot more work to do. But let me tell you, 200 days has been so successful, and the American people are so blessed and proud to have President Trump back behind that beautiful, resolute desk.
Yeah, now let's talk a little bit. Apple has committed another $100 billion to bring back domestic production and manufacturing in the U.S. on top of $500 billion they've already said they were going to do. And then there was that event in the Oval Office, Tim Cook handing over that little Apple trophy to President Trump. That's got to feel like a pretty good win too, huh?
Amazing. And you got to remember why these investments are coming to this country. These are a direct result from the president's tariff policies, in which he has called on manufacturers, companies like Apple. If you do business here, guess what? You're going to face zero tariffs, zero taxes. So they all got the memo and they said, wow, we would rather do business in Kentucky than Cambodia. So let's bring our factories back here. This is amazing news for the American people. This means more jobs for states, for Kentuckians. This is amazing news. This was $100 billion on top of the $600 billion they already committed to. But you're seeing a host of other companies committing these investments to the tune of over $12 trillion already in 200 days. This is incredible. Like I said before, this is a direct impact of the president's tariff policies, the same policies that if you listen to CNBC every single day, they were wagging their fingers at us saying this is going to cause mass destruction. This is going to tank the economy. The American people are literally going to be on food and bread lines because of the tariff policies. The exact opposite has happened. We all knew it because we witnessed 4 years of proper tariff use under the first Trump administration. The economy, with the tariff policies being one lever of it, you look at tax cuts, you look at deregulation, you look at unleashing American energy, this economy is on the brink of reaching its golden age, and we're just 200 days in. Can you imagine what the rest of the term was going to look like?
Well, I'll tell you, I was one of the naysayers, not necessarily wagging my finger or predicting anything horrendous happening. I just didn't like government intervention in free markets. Clearly, Trump sees something that I, 25, 30 years in the business. And I guess it's better for America. Great news. Harrison, another issue I think is very, very important. Trump is calling for another census to be taken, and this time to count only the American citizens. Now, for me, this is a brilliant idea because we all know the census is taken. Districts, states are given a certain amount of resources based on the number of folks that were counted in the census. Now, if you're counting only American citizens, that means resources and assets, taxpayer-funded resources and assets, will be divvied up the proper way, not the way where illegals who are being counted in the census will be taking some of the resources that taxpayers don't want them to take. Will it go through? Commerce Department wants it to go through. Will they have to go to the Supreme Court?
Well, we're going to have to see how this all plays out. You already know a Democrat lawyer somewhere is preparing papers to bring this to the next liberal judge in their district to sue us on it. But of course, we're going to go through the battle and see. But the real concern here is we all know that population equals power in this country. The most populous states are the ones with the most power. You look at California, when reapportionment comes around in 2030, they're going to lose about 4 seats because they're losing population. But if half their population isn't accurately depicted because of illegal immigration and a host of other issues, we really have to understand who is living in the country legally. We should only be serving Americans. They should be the only people that matter in our census. So the president is calling on a common sense proposition. who is living in the country. We need to make sure that the people are here are Americans. Those are the people that we should be counting in our census. This is going to be an ongoing battle. The president is committed to seeing this forth. We've got an incredible Secretary of Commerce in Howard Lutnick to make sure that this is done. But a lot of American people would agree with this. Only Americans should be included in the census. This is what the president is calling about, because like I said before, population equals power in these states. And if states are falsely representing their population due to illegal immigrants, that's a problem. And it's really a disservice to the actual Americans living in the state. And the president, of course, is going to be America first.
Imagine that. What a novel idea. Only Americans being counted in the American census, which really is the basis for how you divvy up the American assets, taxpayer assets being spent on Americans. Crazy. What a great, who'd have thunk? There's some, let's call it whispers, reportage that Trump and Putin will have a conversation, maybe even a meeting. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of reporting out there, and no one here at the White House is going to litigate the high-level negotiations happening in the press, while I know many of you guys want that. But I understand you're respecting the process. And listen, we'll see what happens. The president has been very firm on this. He is happy to meet with anyone, especially in the war that's ongoing in Eastern Europe. But he's not going to meet for the sake of meeting. He wants there to be fruit. The fruit here is ending the war, ending the killing. The president has been consistent on this from day one. We've got to make sure Putin, we got to make sure Zelensky are on the same page before we get there, because we're not going to just fly across the country to meet when there's no fruit on the table to go home with, in the sense of ending this war once and for all. But what the president is doing, he's putting a lot of economic pressure on Russia via sanctions, via tariffs. He's also holding a lot of their allies accountable. Look at India. The president put out a truth, and he just slapped them with more tariffs because they're milking Russia for their oil when they could be doing business with the United States and not one of our adversaries. So the president is taking decisive leadership here in Eastern Europe. He's also trying to end the war between Israel and Gaza. You see the amount of countries that are nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. He is the peacetime president. You look what happened on the first term, and we saw the last 4 years when the world was truly on fire. The president is here with a fire extinguisher alongside Secretary Rubio and Special Envoy Witkoff to try to put these fires out. It's complicated business. Ending war is never going to be easy, but this president in 200 days has done a heck of a lot more than the previous president did in 4 years.
Prepared, cogent, smart, to the point. And I'm not talking about the administration. I'm talking about you, my friend. You are a great spokesperson for the president. I hope he sees these interviews, because I've been doing this a very long time, and you got it going on. Harrison Fields, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
And, keep doing what you're doing.
Always a pleasure.
All right, folks. Harrison Fields. By the way, is the continued divide between Trump and the Federal Reserve putting us behind the curve? Who knows? What's going on with the Fed? When will they get on track? Can the Fed take the right action at the right time? Or are we going to be looking at a potential economic slowdown? Now, what does this mean for your savings? Consider diversifying with gold, and always should use the Birch Gold Group. I do. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation, global uncertainty, and high inflation, and Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or an old 401k, you can convert either one of those into a tax-sheltered IRA in actual physical gold, or just buy some gold, physical gold, in fact, and keep it in your safe, in your home. That's what I do. First, get educated. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. Just text the word America to 989898. Again, text America to 989898. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. That way, if the Fed can't stay ahead of the curve for the country, at least you can stay ahead of the curve for yourself. All right, before we go to break, I've been talking about it all week. I'm going to continue to talk about it. That's a very edgy thing that's coming. I'm going to do it. I hope you join me. In fact, you know what you can do? Call the toll-free number, 888-601-0032. Something really, really hot. See if you can figure out what I'm talking about. I know it's kind of out there, not giving you a lot to work with, but it's going to be good. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes.